season. I want to, first of all, introduce our president, Roger Williams. Just raise your hand.
Hello. Season's greetings. One and all.
Okay, back from sunny Florida.
Yes.
Anyway, I hope that you all like the beautiful weather that we ordered up for you.
Yeah.
It's in between ice and more cold, and so we're pretty grateful for that. First, I'd like to thank the Katherine Wilson Curtin Tent, 62 Daughters of Union Veterans of the Civil War, for the incredible job that they've done in the conservation of Katherine Wilson Curtin's beautiful purple 1880's dress. It'll be a treat for all of us to see afterwards. They also have added to our cookie tables upstairs, and that will also be a treat you can enjoy later. And also thank you to the Central Pennsylvania Civil War Roundtable for partnering with us in this program meeting that goes back as far as 1992, that we've been doing this together at the holiday season. And thank you to the Happy Valley Adventure Bureau for helping to sponsor the filming of this program by Pablo Lopez. We're excited that this will be filmed. The dress will be on display through this Friday, December 20th, and then there will be a little game of the hill. On Sunday, December 22nd, it will resume again. All the hours for this are 1 o'clock until 4 o'clock, and there will be a docent here available for the dress. I see several Historical Society members here today, and we thank all of you for your membership. And we do have remittance form envelopes in the back if anybody would like to renew or join as a member ahead of our January membership drive. After the program, we'll be heading upstairs to enjoy the exhibition and reception, and also as a reminder, food and drink will not be allowed in the exhibition rooms. There are still a few stocking stuffer items left around out in the museum store and upstairs in the founder's room by the dining room. And if you're interested, it's half off night. With that, I would like to introduce Lynn Herman, president of the Central Pennsylvania Civil War Roundtable, and I think he's been the president since about 1992 as well. I'm going to adjust this for you. Here you go.
Thank you very much, Mary, and we always appreciate the beautiful arrangements that are here over the Christmas season of the Center for Expansion for all of us to enjoy. And of course, we have something very special. We're going to see a dress later on that's going to be upstairs on the second floor of what these ladies' project is all about. A short business meeting for us who belong to the Civil War Roundtable, and that is that we have concluded a very successful campaign in 2024 with 10 programs for all of us to enjoy. And like Mary, if you want to join the Center County Historical Society, so many of us are members of both. See her if you want to join our Central Pennsylvania Civil War Roundtable. See me after the meeting, and we'll get you involved with 2025. We as officers of the Civil War Roundtable have decided to keep our dues current for next year at $25 a person and $35 a family. And all of you who belong to our group are going to be getting an email from me before January 1 announcing that, and to get your money into Phil Sauerlander, our treasurer. Something that's different is that we usually meet the first Tuesday of the month from March through the end of the year at the Pennsylvania Military Museum Auditorium. However, they are under restoration for this next year, so we will be meeting at the South Hills Business School. They have plenty of parking that's flat level. You won't have to walk those stairs in the museum. There's plenty of handicap parking. They also have a room that holds about 250 people. So we will have be able to have a really nice program with that. They have all the IT equipment available to us. We're going to start next year, as we usually do, with our annual dinner meeting at the Mount Indian United Methodist Church in Lamont State College. I say State College, they're on like the border. Jim Bloom, our Vice President, is going to be our first featured speaker. Thunder in the Mississippi, Part 3. He's already done Part 1 and 2 for us. April 1st, Cooper Winkert will be back to talk about runaway slaves and the Union Army's military police. And then on December 16th, I think we'll be back here as a joint meeting between our roundtable and the Center County Historical Society on the Ladies' Aid Societies. Those civilian ladies who did so much in the Union effort, the war effort, as they always do no matter what the war is, to support the Union troops from far away. And lastly, of course, we have Pablo Lopez from the Happy Valley Friendship Bureau taping this for us, and we appreciate him being here. And with that, I guess I'll turn it over to our featured speakers tonight. 3 of our Civil Roundtable members, and I assume they're also members of the Center County Historical Society, Sue Kellerman, Linda Cow, and Karen Hazel, to talk about Katherine Wilson Curtin's Tent, 62 Daughters of the Union Veterans of the Civil War. They are. We're here to talk about their restoration project for the Governor Curtin's wife's dress, 1882. Is that correct?
You have to listen.
Okay. Sue, it's all yours.
Well, thank you all for coming out this evening. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Johanna and Mary, for sponsoring and with not only the presentation today, but also the exhibition of the dress that's upstairs. And I'm going to hold you in suspense. No one, Linda, cannot go upstairs before I finish the presentation. So as Lynn said, I'm Sue Kellerman, member and historian of the Daughters of Union Veterans of the Civil War, 1062. I'm joined tonight with several of my sisters behind me. Karen, Linda, Lori, Debbie, Becky, Luann. We have our tent president here, Becky Crossley. So if anyone is interested in joining our organization, Wendy, or talk to Wendy, please see us afterwards. We can give you some more information. Special thanks too to a lot of our members of our organization and past members who worked on the dress, and you'll hear about the dress here in a minute. So I'm really excited to share the story with you this evening. This is a story about a dress, a woman, and who wore it. It's just not any dress. It's a dress worn by former First Lady Pennsylvania Katherine Wilson Curtin, wife of Pennsylvania Governor Andrew Gregg Curtin, who was Pennsylvania's 15th governor during the American Civil War, and later served 3 legislative terms in Washington, D.C. from 1881 to 1887. We will share with you tonight the story of finding the dress, telling you about its owner and the dressmaker, plus the stabilization of the dress. So where did we find the dress? On a planned March 2017 behind-the-scenes visit to the National Civil War Museum in Harrisburg by our tent, unbeknownst to the group, the curator of collections there at the museum, Brett Kelly, surprised us by opening a worn archival box revealing a purple dress that the museum had acquired from an antique dealer in 2013, claiming its provenance to have belonged to First Lady Katherine Wilson Curtin. Needless to say, we were surprised and astonished that the dress survived. Without taking it from the archival box, we could tell it was a special dress, just not any ordinary dress. But did it really belong to Katherine Wilson Curtin, even though it said right on the box? Could we restore the dress? Could we somehow bring the dress back to Center County? Our minds were racing with ideas and dreams of future display opportunities in Center County. So before going on about the dress, let me take a minute to tell you who we are, the Sisters of the Daughters of the Union Veterans of the Civil War, 1861 to 1865. So we're a lineage organization, meaning that the eligibility for membership is limited to women of any generation through lineal descent who provide documentation proof that their ancestor was a soldier or sailor in the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, who served between 1861 and 1865, and who served in the state regiment. Our mission is to preserve our Civil War heritage for posterity while honoring and revering her Civil War ancestry and promoting patriotism in the United States. On May 30, 2014, the Katherine Wilson Curtin Tent 62 was established in Boalsburg. Currently, we have 22 members. And like I said, tent president Becky Crossley is here in the audience. Each local DUV group is called a tent, and is named for an Army nurse who served in the Civil War, or any loyal woman of Civil War era whose patriotic deeds during 1861 to 1865 were recorded. In naming our local Boalsburg tent, unfortunately, we were not able to find a Civil War nurse, but we did discover an extraordinary Center County woman, Katherine Wilson Curtin. Through our research, we found that Katherine accompanied her husband on visits to Union encampments. And most importantly, Katherine and the governor converted the Executive Mansion in Harrisburg into a hospital ward for sick and wounded soldiers. Finding this information about Katherine, there was no question in our mind that our tent would take the name of Katherine Wilson Curtin. So back to the dress. Since that March 2017 visit to the National Civil War Museum, our tent members continue discussing how we could support the conservation stabilization of the dress. We considered fundraising opportunities with women's groups in Harrisburg and Center County, and reached out to a textile conservator to prepare a price book for conservation. Several of us visited the dress off and on at the museum and to document the dress and to take measurements. And as you can see here on the slide, the dress ensemble consists of 4 pieces: a train, a bodice, a skirt, and a jacket. Through our examination, we found that each piece was in good condition and possibly dating from the 1880s, but we weren't really sure of that. Holding up the dress, Linda, we took every conceivable measurement. We found that the purple satin and velvet cloth showed wear on the skirt edge, that most of the dress was hand sewn, that there were layered side panels, and the waist measured 25 inches and the bust 30 inches. I think only Linda can make a good Laying out all the pieces as if wearing it, and the skirt just touching the floor, we guesstimated the owner of the dress was roughly 5 feet 4 inches tall. We also noticed that the train was in exceptionally good condition, suggesting that it was not worn often. And we did kind of weigh it using our thinking of a 5-pound bag of sugar. We estimated the weight of the dress was about 16 pounds. So inside the skirt, dress skirt, we found the dressmaker's label. And this began our research for the next 7 years as to what this dress was all about and how we could stabilize it. Now, I am not a sewer, but Linda, half this group is. And Karen Hazel did a deep dive on the dressmaker. So we're going to give Karen a couple minutes here to talk about the dressmaker and what she found out.
Well, it was very interesting when we looked in the dress. It was really a surprise to see that the label for the dressmaker was in there. And so that set me off on research to see what I could find about L.P. Generet. How do you say it, Linda? Generet. A French designer. And what I was able to find was that this dress designer had many articles in the Baltimore Sun. She had articles and advertisements for hats and bonnets and dresses, and every week there were ads in the paper, so I was able to just track this lady. And also through Ancestry and some other research, I found out that our French designer was really a little Irish girl. Her name was Marie Higgins, and she was born in Ireland in 1843, and she came to Baltimore, immigrated to Baltimore when she was 14 years old by herself. When she was 22 years old, she began her millinery business in Baltimore. In 1866, little Marie Higgins married Louis Paul Generet, who was a watch case maker, and he had immigrated from Switzerland. So she set up shop in Baltimore on 83 North Charles Street, and they had four children, 2 boys and 2 girls. So what I was looking for in the advertisements to see when she would have been making gowns and dresses, and if that period of time matched what we thought when the dress was made. So in 1872, Madame Generet was selling bonnets and hats located at 83 North Charles Street in Baltimore which was just down the street from the University of Maryland and Edgar Allan Poe's grave. So it was right down in the historical district. She advertised weekly in the Baltimore Sun, specializing in fall and winter apparel. So that was good news. I found out her heyday was starting in 1876. I finally saw that she was offering French dresses with her own manufacturing at reduced prices. The ladies could have their own fabric made into the latest style. So that was the start of her heyday. And then she was in business from 1876 to 1888, which falls within the timeline of when we were thinking that this dress was made. I think that was about it for, let me see. By 1888, she was falling into, her health was failing, and she was slowing the business down, and it was just mostly hats that she was making, and had turned the business over to her daughters. And that was in 1888.
So unbeknownst to us, the dress is giving us clues. So who's Katherine Wilson Curtin? Here are 3 pictures of Katherine throughout her life. Jane Baum had written a history of Katherine. Jane Baum was a Curtin family historian and wrote about Katherine throughout her life until Jane Baum died in 2022. So Katherine was Jane's great-great-grandfather's sister-in-law. Or Jane's great-grandfather's brother's wife. I can think about that. Anyway, so here's Jane Baum's account of Katherine. Katherine Irvine Wilson was born the daughter of a country doctor, William Irvine Wilson, on January 17, 1821, at Earlestown, Center County, Pennsylvania. She spent her girlhood in her father's house in the country near Potter's Mills. Dr. Irvine Wilson was the first president of the county's medical society. Dr. Wilson's farm, identified by the deed, was located at Earlestown, which was about 2 miles west of Center Hall on Brush Valley Road to Linden Hall, near the Black Hawk Trailer Park. The Wilsons were country folk and given to hospitality. Katherine's 2 brothers were officers who served in the Civil War. A love of horses and of sport, agreeable manners and handsome looks, and a capacity for friendship made them well liked among their Center County neighbors and remembered traditionally to this day. Katherine married Andrew Gregg Curtin of Bellefonte May 29, 1844. He was a not distant neighbor, a lawyer of promise, on whose family land iron ore was discovered early in the settlement of the county and was smelted by furnaces burning charcoal long before coal was available. Katherine and Andrew were both descendants of the Revolutionary War General James Potter through their maternal lines. They had 7 children, 2 of whom, a daughter Bessie and a son Stanley, died as infants. In 1861, Andrew Gregg Curtin became the Commonwealth's 15th governor and served until 1867. Governor Curtin helped Abraham Lincoln win the Republican nomination for president and was his lifelong friend. After a second term as governor and following the Civil War, Andrew was appointed ambassador to Russia by President Ulysses S. Grant in 1869 and served till 1872, and they lived in St. Petersburg, Russia. In March of '81, Andrew was elected as a member of the U.S. House of Representatives from the 20th District from Pennsylvania. He served in that capacity until March 1887. They lived in Washington, D.C. for 6 years. Okay, I'm laying some clues down here. Okay. Throughout her husband's political career, besides taking care of children in the household, as a politician's wife, Katherine was a consummate hostess to a multitude of visitors and notable dignitaries. Also from Jane Baum's history of the Curtins, during the early years of the Civil War, Governor Curtin organized the Pennsylvania Reserves into combat units and oversaw the construction of the first Union military camp for training soldiers known as Camp Curtin, located in Harrisburg. More than 300,000 men were drilled there during the 4 years. Mrs. Curtin was a resident of Harrisburg for 6 years and in that time took an active part in the social and benevolent affairs. Rearing a family of boys and girls, she found time to attend work of charity and met the social demands that naturally fell upon the wife of a chief executive. While she was there, Harrisburg was a camp and a hospital combined. Mrs. Curtin was first to engage with a local committee in the care of the sick soldiers at Camp Curtin, and it was she who was first suggested to the governor to bring the wounded soldiers from southern battlefields and caring for them and quickly established hospitals in Harrisburg, as a consequence of which almost every church and schoolhouse in the city was converted into a hospital and rapidly filled with wounded Union and Confederate soldiers. Mrs. Curtin was foremost in caring for the wounded, and many a dying pain was eased by her motherly care and caresses of her hand. After the Battle of Antietam and Gettysburg, when the number of wounded brought there was particularly large, Mrs. Curtin enlisted the services of women, nurses, and personally directed their work. When the epidemic broke out among 20,000 soldiers at the camp, she braved the danger and did what she could to mitigate its distressing features. It is said that Mrs. Curtin suggested to the governor to establish the state's soldiers' orphan school, in which thousands of children were cared for and educated. The tales of distress from the soldiers always excited her sympathy. This is their residence in Harrisburg, part of that building. Chair, which part did we think it was? Half of it.
I don't know which part, half.
As First Lady, Mrs. Curtin was known for her personal charm and her gracious hostess. Mrs. Curtin was an ideal wife for a man of official position, and during his administration, she was extremely popular socially. She kept her house open and showed herself as a very gracious, hospitable, and brilliant hostess beloved by all. Once she was a guest of Mrs. Hastings when Governor Hastings occupied the executive mansion. Mrs. Hastings remarked that Katherine was gentle and kindly, motherly, and she was held in the highest esteem in Harrisburg. After returning to Bellefonte, Mrs. Curtin made frequent visits to Harrisburg, where she had many friends among older residents. Governor Curtin's political career ended with his retirement in 1887 and returned to Bellefonte. Newspaper reports that he often was found sitting on the front porch of the home, greeting passersby. Andrew died October 7, 1894, at the age of 77, and Katherine died December 7, 1903, in Bellefonte, having lived a long life of 82 years. This is her house on 120 West 5th Street, which still stands today. Actually, there was an open house. It belongs to the Elks Club now, and there was an open house on Saturday. According to Katherine's obituary in the Democratic Watchman, her death brought a shock to our town in taking from the midst Mrs. Katherine Wilson, widow of ex-Governor A.G. Curtin. Mrs. Curtin, during the afternoon, was taking a custom walk around town, the weather being fine. As she was returning, she was still apparently feeling perfectly well, but shortly after 2, she suffered a stroke, and death claimed her. Mrs. Curtin was a noble woman, modest in her entire demeanor. She was a pattern of dutifulness and sociability. She was in the fullest enjoyment when surrounded by her children and grandchildren, to whom the Curtin home was like unto a paradise upon earth. Have many visited the Elks Club at Curtin House? Yes? Mm-hmm. Now, I think they said at Saturday the house was purchased in 1909, okay, from the Curtins. Good. Back to the dress. We'll get to the dress, okay. Since its discovery at the National Civil War Museum, our tent continued to discuss how to fund the restoration of the dress. The museum was agreeable to have it concerned with our tent's involvement, but how? Our first step was to reach out to the Philadelphia textile conservator Nancy Love for advice. Nancy agreed to review the dress at the museum and to prepare a written condition report, which she did. By 2017, Nancy sent the Tent Sisters a detailed condition assessment and cost for the conservation of the dress, along with recommendations for its storage and display. In 2019, or 2019, sorry, just before the COVID shutdown, the tent members reached out to the Fashion Archives and Museum at Shippensburg University and its director, Karen Bolik, to review the dress and to submit a detailed written proposal of possible treatment options. We had to wait for COVID to get over with. So by 2021, the tent received a detailed piece-by-piece written assessment from Karen, from the Shippensburg University, including a proposal to the tent members that they could possibly work on the dress stabilization under her supervision. Estimated cost, $150. So what do you think we said? Yes. With this favorable offer from the Fashion Archives, we all agreed unanimously to proceed to take on the dress stabilization project. So I want you all to go to the museum, the Shippensburg University and the Fashion Archives. Take your group, go, I mean, it's a fabulous place. The Archives was established in 1980, and they preserve and exhibit apparel and accessories ranging from the 18th century to the present. Its purpose is to enhance the understanding of society through the study of dress. I think, Karen, we spent so much time there, we could probably get a degree from that. The facility houses about 35,000 to 50,000 items featuring just not clothing but accessories, but also reference materials, pattern books, fashion magazines, and mail order catalogs. The Fashion Archive regularly showcases various fashions as part of their exhibition, anything from gowns to underwear. So check their website and see what's coming up for spring 2025. All right, our first trip to the Fashion Archives at Shippensburg was in July 2021 for training. Under the mentorship of the Fashion Archives director and interns, 8 of us and friends of the tent were trained to stabilize the dress for future display. Linda, Karen, Sherry, Debbie Arnold, Nancy Stover, Connie Cole's granddaughter Chelsea, and I was there. I'm not a sewer, so I just kind of like took pictures. Needless to say, the work was tedious, eye-straining, but in the end, it was a true labor of love. We learned a lot with each sewing session. The sewer's work was merely to stabilize the dress, making it sturdy for display, each stitch being totally reversible. Under the watchful supervision of Karen, the work continued for years. There's Sister Debbie working on a section of the jacket. After 4 years, this dress stabilization work was completed. In those 4 years, from 2021 to 2024, 349 hours were spent on the dress project, which included 114 hours spent just on travel to get to Shippensburg. We traveled to Shippensburg 29 times, traveling nearly 5,000 miles, which is equivalent to driving to Reno, Nevada and back. Our work included sewing the ruffle and lining of the train, restringing beads on the bodice, removing the 20th century bodice sleeves. The dress had gone through a couple of iterations, and so we wanted to get back to the original dress, so maybe one of you can talk a little bit about that. Repairing rips in the velvet skirt and cuffs, adding piping and infill of dyed pieces of satin under the armpits, adding netting on the back of the buckles, restringing the bodice and skirt buckle beading, attaching twill straps to bear the weight of the dress, and preparing the mannequins to display the dress. Karen, do you want to talk a little bit more what you, okay.
Sherry, let's switch to the next slide, I think. Okay. This has more details on what we were doing with the, you can see all the little tiny beads. There were a number of, over 12 buckles on the skirt and the bodice, and I counted them one day. I said, let's see how many beads. we had 18,200 beads.
Oh my.
And every string of those beads that you see there had to be restrung, because as soon as we touched the beads, they fell apart. The thread had disintegrated over time. And these beads, you'll see them upstairs, they're so tiny. They're a little bit bigger than a grain of sand, but not much. So we were picking beads up off the floor and scooping them into little jars. There were 29 buttons on the dress, on the four-piece ensemble, and there were 20 hook and eye enclosures. We noticed inside the dress there were hook and eye straps under the bust and around the waist that Katherine would have hooked before she hooked the buttons on the dress. According to the curator of the Textile and Costume Collection at Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia, the buttons were made of steel with brass backings, and this was very typical of buttons from the 1880s. So we had yet another clue. You can see the picture there to the right. There were sections under the armpits where there was perspiration and it was worn away. So how we repaired that, I'm sorry, to the left, Sherry. Yeah, right there. We had to back the holes with fabric to match. And what we had to do was it took 3 different dyes of purple to match the dress. So we had to kind of experiment with different dyes of purple in order to match. You can see the bottom right there, that was the inside lining of the top of the bodice that was all hand sewn. Let's see what else. To hold the fabric together, we had to use they called them bug pins. They were insect pins. Maybe you've seen in museums that they used to pin butterflies and insects and bees and things. Those were the pins we used. You'll also see those upstairs. They're very long beads. They bend very easily, but they're very thin and they don't leave holes. And so that made it easier for us to pin the piping and pin more delicate areas. Often we needed, and I think mostly Linda did this, used a magnifying glass for the really, really tiny stitching. You'll also see upstairs the thread. It was a satin thread. And the satin thread you'll see upstairs is thinner than a regular, it's thinner than like a hair. And it was so thin, we could, it was really hard to thread the needle. And you'll see that upstairs. That also, all that silk hair also had to be dyed. We were also told not to knot the ends of the thread, so it wouldn't pull and strain the satin fabric. And so we were learning lots of new techniques for stabilization and repairing as much as we could. Go ahead and flip that, Sherry, and flip it one more time. You can see the button there on the right. We were intrigued by the design on the button and trying to figure out what kind of leaf or blossom that was. The best we could figure out was it's either a cherry blossom or a plum blossom. And both of those were very popular in the 1880s. And on the other side you can see one of the many buckles on the dress, which included the 18,200. So we would partially work on the buckle and think we were doing really well, and then you'd get to the last 2 strands and it would fall apart in our hands. And we would kind of have to start over. Okay, you can switch that, Sherry. So the next thing we did was, once we felt that Karen felt that the dress was ready, ready for stabilization, and our work was complete in February of this year, Sue and I traveled back to Shippensburg to learn how to prepare the dress on the mannequins and for display. So Sue and I thought this would be, it's about 2 hours and 15 minutes down to Shippensburg over 2 mountains. So we figured we'd probably be there for a couple hours, go out for lunch and head back. No. It took us over like 5 hours. The part of the mannequin is called the draping over the mannequin is called the skin. And then they had little sections for the bust and sections for the hips that you would stuff with polyfill. And you can see down here on the right-hand side, sections that filled for the arms and to put around the back for the bustle and for a little bit to fill in a little bit of the tummy. So Karen was always telling us, don't worry, once you try the bodice on and the skirt on, it'll tell you what you need to do. So we would know if there were gaps or dimples or places in the dress that needed to be filled in. We must have tried the dress on 20 times. So we were just worried about how much, hoping we weren't doing any stress to the dress. As we repaired each mannequin, more and more padding was added to form to fill in the dress. And then, after we got that done, we thought, well, just put the dress on, but no, there were undergarments. So we needed to put the petticoats. I think yeah. So then all the petticoats had to be pressed. And we had help there from an intern in Shippensburg, Montana, was helping us. So we had to iron and press all the petticoats. So after 5 hours of padding the forms and trying on the bodice jacket at least 20 times, we got closer to a final fit. And on September 4th, 2024, 7 years since discovering the dress at the National Civil War Museum, the dress was made ready to come back to Center County.
So the dress is giving us a lot of clues, but if it could just tell us a few more clues, that would help us. So we noticed there were stains on the sleeve. Was it coffee? Was it wine? We'd like to know that. We did see tears in the skirt. We thought maybe she caught her heel in the skirt. We'd like to know more about that. The dress could tell us. There were modifications. Maybe you can talk about the modifications that were done, and they made the sleeves a little bit longer. We asked Karen at the Fashion Archives, would she have worn a brooch at the neck? So Karen came running out looking for pinholes, and she said no, she did not. There's no evidence of the brooch. What would she have worn? Would she have worn a hat? No hats were worn then. Did she have a bracelet on? Maybe a bracelet. Maybe feathers, maybe a comb in her hair. What kind of shoes did she wear? We're trying to get as much as we could from the authority to see what would accessories she would have had with the dress. And, what social event did she wear the dress at? I'm curious about that as well. So, did it really belong to Katherine? Can we date the dress? Where would she have worn the dress? According to a 2017 conversation with Jane Baum, remember that she's the Curtin family historian, she suggested that Katherine's great-great-grandson, George Harris Schubert Jr., who passed away in 2013 in Bellefonte, qualified as an old gentleman who might have attested to the authenticity of the dress as shared by the initial purchaser of the dress. Evidently, the dress was sold and then sold again, so we're really sure. But we know, we're certain that it came from Bellefonte. If we're certain that it came from George Harris Schubert's collection, and he said it was her dress. Based on leading textile curators who examined the dress, and with our conversations with the Shippensburg Fashion Archives expert, they and we believe the dress dates from the 1880s, specifically 1885, when it was worn during the winter social season. The features of Katherine's dress show evidence of many of the characteristics that define an 1880s dress, by structure and abundance of decorations. These characteristics include the dress is constructed of synthetic dyed purple velvet, yes. The dress includes a bustle, yes. A shelf-like protrusion that projected from the small of the back that dates from 1884. So the bustle was in vogue, out of vogue, and came back in vogue for only 1 year. and then went out of vogue again. So now we know the bustle is from 1884. The bodice portion of the dress is long and tightly fitted that extends over the hips, yes. The hemline of the dress is above the floor, yes. The skirt features overskirts that were swagged and tucked up in various ways to reveal underskirt, which was frequently ruffled or pleated, yes. The dress features shorter sleeves as seen in late afternoon and evening dresses, and frequently includes a long fishtail train, yes. Dress also features a separate jacket to accommodate the bustle as opposed to a cloak or capes that were dominant and earlier in the mid-1880s. The dress is highly decorated with trim, lace, buckles, buttons, as was the vogue of women wear in the 1880s. The dress cloth resembles drapery and furnishing fabric of dark colors and three-dimensional effects using velvet, cotton velvet, and satin. So yes, we checked all those boxes. So based on all this evidence, we believe it's Katherine's dress that dates from 1885. And it also matches the dressmaker's heyday of 1885. And if you're wondering, 5'4" Katherine would have been 64 years old in 1885 with a 25-inch waist. As mentioned earlier, in March 1881, Andrew was elected as member of the U.S. House of Representatives from the 20th District from Pennsylvania. He served in this capacity until March 1887, 81 to 87. They lived in Washington, D.C. for those 6 years. Based on Boyd's directory from 1885, Katherine and Andrew lived at 1518 K Street in Washington, D.C. in that building. K Street is now a restaurant, which I think we have to go to. And it's an 11-minute walk to the White House. So where would Katherine have worn the dress, possibly? Being a woman of high society and elite circles in Washington and Harrisburg, we can only imagine the number of lavish receptions, parties, and social events that she and the governor attended at the White House and hosted at their home. If indeed the dress dates from 1885, this places Katherine and Andrew in Washington, D.C. when he was serving in the House of Representatives. I think some of you know I love newspapers, so of course I'm searching all kinds of Washington newspapers, searching this high society articles to find out if Mrs. Curtin attended any event and wore a purple dress. I never found that she wore a purple dress, but I found this article from February 12, 1885 in the Washington, D.C. newspaper, the Evening Star. The article reports a dinner was hosted by Representative Curtin and Mrs. Curtin at their home, 1518 K Street, in honor of President Chester Arthur and his sister, Mary McElroy. This would have been during the winter season and only weeks before the end of President Arthur's administration. Could Katherine have wore her purple dress that day? We can't be certain of this, but we like to think that she did. So, are you ready to see the dress?
Sure.
Before we see the dress, maybe you have questions. I must obviously thank the National Civil War Museum, the Fashion Archives Museum in Shippensburg, Lynn's Group, the Historical Society. We will see the dress. The dress will be on display tonight through Friday and again on Sunday from 1 to 4. In early 2025, the dress will return to the National Civil War Museum, where a new display of Pennsylvania women during the Civil War will be installed, with Katherine's dress being the main feature of the display. So thank you for attending tonight, and if there are any questions, we'll be happy to entertain them.
That mademoiselle who made this dress, how'd you get all the research? How'd you find out all that stuff?
So we're good. We're good.
I'll tell you what else we did. There's a lot of research done here, and I congratulate and commend all of you.
I went on Ancestry, that's where I just thought, let me get started there, and then I found all the newspaper articles about her advertisements. So every week I was just tracking her advertisements, and her business was getting better and better. And then I saw newspaper articles about her son and her family. So then when I found out she immigrated from Ireland, because my great grandparents immigrated from Ireland. I was pretty excited about that.
Any other questions? Bill?
Just out of curiosity, her label says French.
Yeah.
But why, how does that tie in with
Well,
the
she
French
did-
design?
Yes, she did. She did make trips to France. So I don't know if she went there and took the fabric there, or she bought the fabric there and then copied from French designers and made them in Baltimore. She also had a shop in Washington D.C. too, so she had a shop in both places.
My question is, with such care given to, reconstructing the dress and the fabric being so delicate after all these years, when you're doing the exhibit, daylight coming in from windows, anything, how do you archive that, not archive, but how do you protect the dress? Is it encased?
Well, for the 7 years that we've been working on it, it's been at the Fashion Archive in Shippensburg, and it's been in like a climate-controlled box. And then we would just bring it out to work on it for usually 4 hours at a time was all we could get to it before we had to drive home before it got dark. So it's just going to be here for this week, and then when it goes back to the Civil War Museum, I'm sure they have protocols for how often it can be displayed, and it could be in the light and what temperatures.
Did any of you try to sneak a peek, actually try on some of that clothing when no one was looking?
Linda did, but don't tell anybody.
Yeah, Bill.
Our group has sponsored restoration of flags. One was at 148, which is a central Pennsylvania regiment. Anyway, part of that was dealing with fabric. And one thing we learned was that a lot of these flags were silk, and silk deteriorates. And you were mentioning with satin. I don't know exactly what satin is, but does it deteriorate like silk does?
Do we know about the fabric or deterioration?
It is a, satin is silk, treated in a certain way. So I think it deteriorates less fast, but it still deteriorates.
Because the most expensive flags were silk, which are the worst shape.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, upstairs, when you go upstairs, you'll see part of the display. We have the items we use to stabilize, and one of the items is a mesh. It looks like a tool that you'd see like on a wedding dress or a fancy dress, but the holes in the mesh are really tiny. And so we would use that up behind ruffles or lace or underneath and stitch around it to stabilize and strengthen if there was a hole, like a moth hole or a little spots from perspiration, and that would strengthen it. So you'll see that upstairs. Yeah.
Now, when the pictures of you sewing on it, you didn't have gloves on. So did you have to treat your hands anything differently?
No, we just had to wash our hands, and we couldn't eat or have anything to eat or drink in the room. And make sure your hands were clean.
Hey, other questions?
How did you get the perspiration and then the wine and the other stains out of the fabric?
We did not. And my question was, where there were moth holes and little spots on the piping, the piping that goes around the edges of things, you could see some of the underneath white showing through. And I asked Karen, I said, can we just dye this to match? And she said, no, we would never dye it because that would introduce more chemicals and more deterioration. So when you look at it, if you look closely, you can see where there's little spots where there maybe were little moth holes or where there was wear and tear on the piping. But we didn't clean it, no. So she had a good time. She enjoyed herself in that dress, yeah.
Could you trace it all, where it had been, even to put it back just from where you found it?
Where the dress has been,
Yes, over the years.
its journey.
They had very little information, We have more information about the dress than the Civil War Museum, obviously. They didn't know much about the dress, only that it was her dress, because it said so in the box. They had no record of it.
And they had no record of receiving the dress?
They didn't have much of it.
Yeah, they actually have the provenance.
The provenance, right. But
And it came from Rosemary Antiques
Yeah.
in 2013. And I actually I tried to call her, but I didn't get the right number. So I wrote her a letter asking her about it. And weeks went by and she gave me a call. And she said somebody had given it to her. Her specialty was jewelry, but she loved that color purple. So she wanted to acquire it. At that time, she said, "I'm sorry, I can't remember his name." So weeks went by, and then she called. She said, "I remembered his name." And so she gave me the name of the person. His name was Byron Heavenly Black. And he was from Bellefonte, and he had also an antique shop outside of Harrisburg. So he acquired it. The story is he acquired it somewhere in Bellefonte, and then had it in his shop. She saw it, and she used it until she was going to close up her store, and then gave it to the National Symphony Museum.
So just that little bit of a,
That's all we know.
that's all we know. That's all we know. We'll talk about the additional 20th century sleeves of that.
Oh, we did find a part of the section of the bodice that had black stripes on it. And the sleeves were longer and came out. And so we think sometime in the early 1900s, the bodice had been adjusted to be more fashionable and had pieces added to it. So we did deconstruct that so we could take the dress back to its original form.
There's a question back here.
Were you able to iron any portion of it?
No.
I didn't think.
No.
So how did you
I
keep it from?
I think, well, you'll see upstairs, it's just how we got it out of the box and put it on the mannequin. But I think maybe when it goes to the Civil War Museum, they will have professionals there that know how to steam things and to make it more look more professionally displayed.
Are you going to get credit for reconstructing when they put it on display?
Yes,
Hope so.
and this display is going to be $10,000. Yes, we hope so. We did meet with them a couple months ago in Boalsburg to talk about the display here, how long we can have the dress here on loan at the Historical Society, and about our presentation.
They were so impressed when we met with them at the Duffy's Tavern in Boalsburg that they then said, "We need to do something to highlight women during the Civil War at the museum." And they promised that they would make this dress the feature piece at the museum. So we're going to hold them to that. And hopefully they call us to help just put it on display and to talk about other things for on display. They have a couple things of Governor Curtin at the museum as well, so there might be something in him and her as well.
Tied together.
Marcy.
Now, how long would like somebody in high society wear a dress like that?
We talked to Karen. How many dresses would she have had like that?
I mean, they say kind of 6 to 12.
Yeah, 6 to 12 dresses, we thought. We tried to pull out every bit of information we could from the Fashion Archives director, what kind of shoes she wore, the combs that she would have in her hair. I mean, we tried to get as much information, and you'll see that upstairs. We did buy some satin shoes, not her shoes, but satin shoes that were from the period. But yeah, she might have had 10 dresses like this.
And how often would she rewear?
Oh my
And
gosh.
how often in that time period would they rewear?
Well, wouldn't have worn it to the same event.
Right.
Yeah.
If the President of the United States saw it once, I don't think he'd wear it.
Yeah.
I will keep searching newspapers with the High Society articles to find that Mrs. Curtin wore a purple dress at some event. I'll let you know when you find it.
Yeah, Paul?
So how do you move it? Do you take it off the mannequin, put it in the box?
Yes.
Then you put it back on, because otherwise you couldn't leave it in the mannequin and put it in a car.
No, it goes back into the box,
Oh.
and then the mannequins are down in my family room.
Oh.
With bags over them, so it's a little creepy when you go in.
Oh.
There's some ghosts in there.
In your addition, this lady who made the dress is Baltimore, right, Madam
Yes.
whatever.
Madam General.
Okay, and 1885, you kind of designate that time frame, so how much would this dress cost?
Yeah.
Do you have any idea? Or similar dresses?
Okay, Linda, you research that, we'll let you know.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll have to look that up.
We'll look that up.
Yeah.
In your research, did you find other dresses like this, or other famous people of fame who would have worn dresses like this around that time period?
Yeah, they're mentioned quite frequently.
Like President Jesse Ray Arthur's wife, for example?
Right.
Let's do that.
Yeah, I mean, they were entertaining more than 2 or 3 times a week. They were here and there, and they had literary societies, and they had all kinds of singing groups and everything like that. But I don't know, and they would describe it sometimes, usually in the larger gatherings, they would describe Madam so-and-so or doing this and that. And so there are similar, yes, there's purples several times that I've seen.
Yeah, how much, since you know how much time you worked to restore this, the dressmaker herself, how long would it take her to make a dress like this?
We'll let you know.
Any other questions?
I'll be on it, Lynn.
Yeah.
And when is the display going to happen, the next display?
This week is only,
No, not here, but
When it goes back to the
yes.
Civil War Museum?
Yes.
I don't know yet, so.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, so
we'll let you know when it goes
I'll get
back.
back to my house and then we'll reach out to them and find out, how we get it back down there.
So this is the only stop in Center County of this dress. This is as close as we can get to Bellefonte with the dress. But we're so happy for the dress to be here tonight and for you all to see it. It is stunning.
All right, before we go see any other last questions, we have a book raffle to conduct here. Any other last questions? If not, we'll have the book raffle. Julianne's picked out 7 tickets. We have 7 books. And I'm just going to start at the top. We're just going to distribute these. Again, I want to emphasize the monies you purchased for the book raffle tonight, all the monies go toward the filming of this, which was like $350. And then between the round table and the Center County Historic Society, we're donating $50 each to the ladies for their efforts, and that'll go toward them too.
The raffle was about $97.
$97 will go toward the filming tonight. So thank you for your generosity. All right, look at your tickets. Last three numbers are 1, 2, 2.
If you're the winner, just come up.
All right, you got James McPherson. Way to go. Next ticket is 222. 222. 222. Now I know someone has it. Nobody escaped.
It's yours.
Okay, I'll go to the next one. We'll set that aside in case somebody finds it. Next ticket is 191. 191. Right there. You got it? There you go. All right. 191. I said, okay. 171. 171. 171. Okay, Sherry, here you are. There you go, here. Next raffle ticket, 201. Mike?
Yes.
All right, next one is 178.
Thank you.
178.
It's a short person in the back.
Okay. Okay, and 135. 135.
Oh, it is me.
There you go. All right, got 1 book left, and I'm still looking for 222. Nobody wants to claim 222? No? 149. 149. Last three digits, 149.
Over here.
Oh, great, okay. Civil War battlefield, see what like you'd be interested in. All right, Mary, I turn it back to you for conclusion.
Thank you again, everyone, for coming tonight. And thank you so much to Sue and Karen and Linda and her team for allowing us to have this exhibition here. This is really special. But and again, I'd like to invite you upstairs to a reception and to enjoy the exhibit.